No Panic Zone. I'm Steve Gruber. I am America's voice. I'm an anti-socialist, and here are three big things you need to know right now. Number one, farmers are being targeted for elimination by the Dutch government, despite the fact that it will result in food shortages, starvation, and death in the EU. All true. Number two, speaking of the EU, in Germany, the first state has now declared a financial and energy emergency because of the reckless policies of the last 10 years, and it's getting worse. And number three, in China, the massive protests against the months-long COVID lockdowns are continuing to grow as citizens are fighting back against military and police. For those that have fled the communist dictatorship of Xi Jinping, they know that he and the CCP will stop at nothing to maintain power and control. And what an embarrassment it should be to the likes of Apple, Nike, and the NBA. They're among some of the biggest American names taking boatloads of cash from the Chi-Coms to sell out America and push the socialist communist narrative. It's disgusting. Plus all the politicians like Congressman Eric Swalwell, who likely sold his soul for his former girlfriend, Chinese spy and lady of the night Fang Fang. Those that know how it works inside the communist machine and survived the brutal dictatorship of Mao Zedong, who was responsible for the deaths of as many as 100 million Chinese after his communist revolution took control of the country in 1949, say the CCP, the party, will stop at nothing, and also are calling this a watershed moment in the history of China and the world that could finally bring down the totalitarian regime there. Mao and those that followed him have been brutal in killing anyone that got in the way of the party and destroyed anything in its path. The people have been brutalized for decades, but it has been the zero-tolerance policies surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic that have lasted now 3 years that seems to have pushed the country of 1.5 billion people over the edge, to the breaking point. What is truly remarkable, as we are witnessing the battles in the streets, is just how far some of the American apologists will go to defend the communists and their ruthless tactics. Anthony Fauci, for example. He's okay with a Chinese lockdown as long as there's a purpose. Believe it or not, Anthony Fauci is okay with the lockdown as long as there's a purpose, like stopping the spread of COVID. Listen to this.
There should be a purpose to it, like you want to make sure you get enough ventilators or enough PPE, or you want to get your population vaccinated. The comment that I made about their severe actions that they've taken is that you have to have an end game. What's the purpose? If the purpose is let's get all the people vaccinated, particularly the elderly, then okay, for a temporary period of time to do that.
Yeah, as long as there's a purpose and a temporary time to do that, it's all perfectly fine, says Anthony Fauci. Unbelievable, really. Unbelievable. The United States has said almost nothing. It's remarkable. The silence from the United States absolutely deafening and shameful, as Joe Biden is proving to be among the weakest of all American presidents ever when it comes to foreign policy. The bottom line is this: Joe Biden is not capable of being in charge of dealing with the Chinese or, well, frankly, anyone else. What's really frightening is that everyone, even Democrats, know that's the truth. So once again, Joe Biden and the United States say nothing about the human rights abuses of China against its citizens, the abuse of foreigners, including journalists, too. Thankfully, the new United Kingdom Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has no such reservations. Listen to this.
Now, let's be clear. The so-called golden era is over, along with the naive idea that trade would automatically lead to social and political reform. But nor should we rely on simplistic Cold War rhetoric. We recognise China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards even greater authoritarianism. Instead of listening to their people's protests, the Chinese government has chosen to crack down further, including by assaulting a BBC journalist. The media and our parliamentarians must be able to highlight these issues without sanction, including calling out abuses in Xinjiang and the curtailment of freedom in Hong Kong.
The curtailment of freedom in Hong Kong And that happened a few years ago. Hong Kong, separate but equal and all that nonsense. Doesn't work here, doesn't work there, doesn't work anywhere. Sunak says the UK is ready to make bold changes now in the face of global threats to defend his nation against aggressive behavior by other nations, specifically, obviously, China. And he says the quickening of everything that's happening is clearly a concern. Listen to this.
The pace of geopolitical change is intensifying. Our adversaries and competitors plan for the long term. After years of pushing at the boundaries, Russia is challenging the fundamental principles of the UN Charter. China is conspicuously competing for global influence using all the levers of state power. Now, in the face of these challenges, short-termism or wishful thinking will not suffice. We can't depend on Cold War arguments or approaches, or mere sentimentality about our past. So we will make an evolutionary leap in our approach. This means being stronger in defending our values and the openness on which our prosperity depends.
Being stronger in defending our values and stepping up to declare what freedom means. Now, the UK is not nearly as free as the United States, but at least they have a young, vibrant leader who understands at least this part of the equation, which is that China is dangerous. Now, keep in mind, Sunak is still suspect to me. Too many close ties with the World Economic Forum and the Klaus Schwabs of the world. Too many close ties to globalists and billionaires and the Davos crowd. But in this particular moment, calling out the Chinese for their reckless, cruel, and deadly lockdowns is absolutely the right thing to do. Something America doesn't have the good sense to do, or any sense at all, considering the way we see Joe Biden. China's no big deal. Come on, man. Really, Joey? They're not going to eat our lunch. No, they're going to eat you for lunch, dinner, and have a little leftovers for breakfast too, Joey, because that's just how weak you are, and they know it. They know it. That's the problem. We have no leadership. At least the UK appears to have some. I'll see how he performs and what he does in the long term, Sunak. Clearly better than what we're dealing with at the moment, at least. I can give him that, because right now we're dealing with a vapid, senile old man. And an administration that uses him as nothing more than a ragdoll puppet. I'll take a break. We've got more on this. I'm not done. This is the Steve Gruber Show.